There's something funny in here, Mr. Brogan. You know, it's a good thing I found this. It's gonna make your sofa so much more comfortable to sit on. Shit. Mr. Brogan, I do believe you're fucked. Royally. Shit.
Three Films and a Podcast has no claim of ownership on any film footage used in this episode. All film footage is owned in its entirety by the copyright holders and is used solely with the intent of film criticism, commentary, and education under fair use law. And just like every car in Too Fast, Too Furious, this podcast contains spoilers. Enjoy.
Hey there, welcome back to Three Films and a Podcast, the show where three friends work their way through unseen movies in a unique and rotating format. Coming from Portland, Oregon, my name's Tyler Beck. I'm here with Benjamin Lawhorn and Matt Weiler, both back in Salt Lake City. And today we're going to discuss the Spike Lee film 25th Hour. It's part of Spike Lee Festival, because the way this whole thing works is one of us will pick a nomination category, and then each of us have to pick a movie that fits that category. So for this round, I had chose Spike Lee films because I had seen few Spike Lee films and I wanted to rectify that mistake in my life. So after a chat with Ben, we decided let's make it this round. And we chose three different movies. Like I said, 25th Hour, Malcolm X, and we chose Do the Right Thing, which we covered in our very first podcast, which if you haven't listened to it yet, I would recommend go back, check that out, and make sure you watch Do the Right Thing first, because as always, these things are not spoiler free. If you have not seen any of these movies, we are going to destroy them for you. So with all that in mind, I figured the last episode, we didn't really talk about ourselves too much, which was somewhat intentional. But I figured I'd like to let you guys get to know us a little bit. Like I said, I live up here in Portland, Oregon. I've been friends with Ben for a long time, and he and I have worked on a bunch of different film projects. I sort of took my film school vicariously through Ben. What he learned in school, he was nice enough to teach me. And then he introduced me to Matt, and we've become sort of three peas in a pod watching all these movies together. And yeah, so maybe I don't know if Ben wants to talk about himself a little bit.
I would love to. First, I want to know if that pun was intentional, because
it wasn't.
I really love the three peas in a pod.
That's the new name for the podcast.
Yes. At the very least, a new branding idea.
Yes, exactly. Oh, we're going to switch everything up. Yeah, no, I mean, I am from originally like West Jordan, Utah, and I grew up in the same neighborhood as Matt. My cousin was best friends with him, and so that's how Matt and I connected, and I just kind of knew that we had similar interests the whole time. And then I got a job out at the airport, and that's where Tyler and I met each other, and we've been friends for over 15 years now, which just sounds like such a super long time, but
until you see the gray in my beard.
Yeah, exactly. So then I got a film degree at the University of Utah, and Tyler helped me out with pretty much every single project. We had a company going on the side where we did a lot of weddings. We were able to go to Kenya and shoot some documentary stuff out there. But throughout the whole friendship, I think one of the things that's really connected us is our love of film. So it's kind of a natural progression. I had started out doing a movie challenge with some other people where they tried to do the absurd amount of 500 movies in a year. And then Tyler and I kind of revamped that a little bit and came up with the qualifier idea. And then we brought Matt in because he's just on the same level as we are as far as a love for film and trying to expose ourselves to things that we haven't seen and things that I feel like we think we should have seen by this point. So that's a little bit of my background of where I come from and where my love for film comes from and how we're all connected. So
yeah, and like as Ben said, we knew each other way back in the old neighborhood, and honestly, during the period of like 2003 to 2006, Ben probably paid for 80% of the movies that I saw in theater. So it was
wait, I never got that deal.
Yeah, no, it was cool. He was the only one who made money, so
buying my friends, you know.
It was it was a good deal. And yeah, I mean, Ben contacted me last fall about, potentially in 2020 starting up this movie club with him and Tyler. And I would have joined no matter what. But what really appealed to me was just the idea of forcing ourselves to view movies that either just didn't get the right attention by ourselves, or just, we just didn't see. So some of these movies we've obviously seen, but it's great to sort of recap and sort of have an unconventional format for choosing new movies to watch.
Yeah, for sure. And to me, the 25th Hour, I mean, both of the movies that we've covered on the pod really are perfect examples. They're movies that I had heard of for a long time, and they're movies that I had wanted to watch for a long time, but for whatever reason, I just never really got into it. So it's been really cool to, push each other and watch new stuff. And, with the 25th Hour particularly, like, I'd heard about it for so long, and, I knew it was supposed to be this masterpiece and this beautiful portrait of New York post 9/11. And I actually don't even think I knew that. I just think I knew it was a Spike Lee movie set in New York before a character goes to prison.
You can't see me being a father?
No. Well, I could see you fathering children. I couldn't see you raising any.
I would raise my own chalupas.
Well, we're definitely not having any kids together if you're going to be calling them chalupas.
It's probably your mother.
You have the worst timing ever.
Montgomery broken in? I'm Agent Flood with the Drug Enforcement Administration.
Everything's gotten so strange, Pop. The only people I trust are you and guys I grew up with.
What do we say to him?
We'll say nothing. He's going to hell for 7 years. What am I going to do, wish him luck?
Basically, I had no idea what I was getting myself into watching it, but what we saw was not what I expected. I don't know how that makes any sense. Like, I didn't know what to expect, but this was not what I expected. I think I expected more of like a caper and heist movie, or like someone running from the cops, or sort of running from his situation as opposed to being resigned to his situation. And I think it's interesting that it's all set around sort of the dynamic of all these three friendships. And here we are, three friends getting ready to discuss it. So without further ado, we could jump into it. Most obvious thing to talk about is 9/11 here. And it kind of feels like burying the lead here, but I mean, I don't know how you guys felt other than what you guys wrote on your Letterboxd, which, by the way, listeners, watchers, follow us on Letterboxd. You can see all of our reviews. I just loved, loved might be the wrong word for the subject matter, but I thought it was really cool how they chose to sort of timestamp this movie with 9/11. And I wrote this in my Letterboxd view, but I am curious how much weight that would hold for someone that didn't grow up through 9/11. Like someone that was born after 9/11, or someone that's born now, if they see this movie when it's appropriate for them to see it. I just wonder if it would resonate in the same way, and I'm curious what you guys think about that.
Yeah, I mean, for you and I, Tyler, I mean, being the same age, Matt is not too far behind, but I mean, this was our first fall out of high school. So we were maybe in our first year of college, or, whatever it was that we were doing. But this was just a huge moment in our life. We had been through some things before. Our first year of high school is when Columbine happened, and that was definitely a life changer without a doubt. But this was something that's just on an entirely different scale that we had never experienced before, and honestly just felt like everything came to a stop. So I know when you talk to some people, that's kind of a phrase, I guess, or a question that can be thrown around. It's like, where were you when this happened? When Princess Di died, or I couldn't think of another way to phrase that. I don't think I can use that.
But I think it's appropriate to talk about, where we were and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think just where we were in our lives are very important, because when you see this movie, I'm sure we'll get into it a little later on, but they were in production when 9/11 happened. Like this this has been added into the movie. It was not part of the original book or the original script. And I think you can just see how new and how much of like an open wound it was in the movie. And I think Spike did a great job of not exploiting it. I think he did a wonderful job of making it almost another character. It becomes the ultimate setting without being overwhelming. So as, you know, people who are very familiar with, you know, our feelings and where we were when 9/11 happened, this definitely brought me back to that time. And I think it definitely added to the movie, even though it was not, you know, part of the original, the conceit of the film.
For sure. Yeah. I think of it like, you know, they're not the same in quality by any means, but like the movie Pearl Harbor, or, you know, a movie like Saving Private Ryan, like they're all built around World War II, and it's something that resonates with everyone in the world. I think, especially specifically Saving Private Ryan, that movie's effective because of the personal journeys that you follow, and it's not necessarily a moment. And it's visceral, right? Like Saving Private Ryan, you're in the war, you see the war. Like Dunkirk, a movie we watched as part of our movie club, you're in the war, you're in these battles, and so it resonates in that way. And I thought it was really interesting how subtle, I mean, maybe subtle is the wrong word, but like how you said, it wasn't in your face, but it was always right there. It wasn't what they were talking about, it was what they were dealing with. And I thought that was really cool. And I'm curious if, Matt, if you have any favorite moments in that regard from the movie with thinking about 9/11 as a backdrop.
Yeah, I mean, going along with what you guys have said, I think, and maybe it's not subtlety, but maybe just like the, I guess just the honesty without like projecting it too much. The honesty of the whole situation is what came through to me. Like around that time you had like Spider-Man 2 came out, and I remember Ben, speaking of growing up in the same neighborhood, I remember the big like Spider-Man 2 poster that he had, and in Spider-Man's eyes is reflected the Twin Towers. Mm-hmm. And they actually, like, after 9/11, they cut the Twin Towers out of all the marketing. And so the Twin Towers in those images is kind of an artifact because they don't appear in the film. And so it was kind of a weird time where, like, it's almost as if it was being censored out of respect, but it was sort of being taken out of, like, marketing and movies around that time. And so to see it sort of in its this like raw aftermath in 25th Hour was something that I had never even seen. Like I can't even think of another movie that sort of even addresses it that way. Yeah. But it's very matter of fact. It's just there. Yeah. And it doesn't try to state it. It doesn't talk about the attacks. It doesn't really delve too much into it. And then you have like around that time, I think I never even saw this movie, but the Nicolas Cage movie where I think it's called 9/11 or
World Trade Center.
World Trade Center. Okay.
Oh, right. I never watched that either.
I didn't see it, but I almost feel like this sort of captures what it probably felt like to be a New Yorker during that time, where like you're still living your life, you still have these other problems, but then you look out the window and there's ground zero. And so to answer Tyler's question, I think like the most standout scene, and I think we all mentioned this in our Letterboxd, is when Jake and I can't remember the other character's name.
Or not Monty. Look at us with our movie podcast. We don't know the characters' names.
The third friend.
Yeah, Philip Seymour Hoffman, whatever his name was.
They're having this like argument about whether they're going to still be friends and still visit Monty in prison. And just in the backdrop, there's the crew that's cleaning up Ground Zero.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
New York Times says the air's bad down here.
Oh, yeah? Well, fuck the Times. I read the Post.
And it's just interesting to think about, like, here these guys have, like, their problems, their life that they're discussing, and the whole world, like, as they know it, is, like, really hurt around them, just right outside the window. Yeah. And the fact that they're not paying any attention to it, they're looking at this crew like clean up Ground Zero, and that's not even the topic of the conversation.
Right.
What's he planning to do with Doyle?
How the fuck should I know? I don't know, maybe leave him with Natural or something.
They should at least let him take Doyle with him.
What?
Just let him take Doyle with him. He wouldn't be so
You
lonely.
can't take a fucking dog to the Hooskow, Jake.
I'm just saying, it'd be kind of nice if you could.
Alright. Yeah, it'd be nice.
Yeah, it's sort of such a testament to the adaptability of us as a species and New Yorkers, because like when you were talking about how everything was sort of the Twin Towers were sort of deleted from our memory and that we weren't supposed to see that anymore. I think I really appreciated the honesty of this film, and I wish I would have seen it more in the moment because I'm curious how I would have felt about it then. But just it was more like, hey, this is what happened. This is what we're doing. We're moving on. Our best friend's about to go to prison. Like, let's figure. We got to figure this out. Like, they're cleaning that up. We're going to deal with that, but we got to deal with this too. And I think it's refreshing to see that we were sort of like allowed to see that. You know what I mean? It wasn't completely erased. And I think I think it was important, and it really added to the film for me. And it was probably my favorite part of the movie.
Along those lines too, like that I think is really interesting is this idea of this bigger issue going on in the background while we are focused on the smaller, story that's happening as far as like Monty going to jail. I think we see that even move to a smaller version when the bartender invites them to her birthday party on Sunday, and they all know that Monty's not going to be here.
Hey, these are on me.
Cheers. Thanks. Thank you, Joe.
You guys ought to come by Sunday for my birthday party.
Yeah. Thanks, Joe.
You don't have to come. I was just saying.
No, thanks. Thank you. Cool. Fuck Sunday.
Hey, fuck Sunday.
And it's like she doesn't know what they're going through in this situation, and it's just like kind of this awkward silence of like, yeah, thanks, she like kind of takes it personally, feeling like she's being rejected, but it's like she's not aware of what's happening in their bigger picture. And I just think it's just all these different, almost like dominoes of just like this really large background piece of 9/11. It looms over the whole movie. But it's like you said, it's hardly ever addressed. There's the rant that we'll get into where they talk about Osama bin Laden, but that's essentially it. But we start out the movie credits with the lights, that were put there in place of the Twin Towers, and we see that there. And like you guys are talking about this discussion between Frank and Jacob, I think just looking on IMDb, I did not remember that, but honestly, like I felt a little foolish. But the first time I saw it, it's one long take, and it's beautiful and it's amazing. And it took me a second to realize why we were just staying over their head and just staring at them. I was like, oh, it's weird they're not going to like any other angles on this. And then it's like, yeah, why would you go to another angle? Like,
so
this is the most beautiful shot. Yeah.
Because I genuinely don't remember what they were talking about in the movie.
Yeah.
I literally, the first thing I saw was the open pit. Because I don't know if either of you, did you ever get a chance to go to Ground Zero after 9/11 and see it?
Yeah. I went to the memorial thing that they have. Yeah.
Okay. See, I haven't even seen that. I saw like the pit, like as it was shown in the movie. I saw it pretty soon after 9/11 happened. And like you said, we worked at the airport. That was one of the first big trips I did was go to New York, and we saw Ground Zero. And so for me, when I saw that pit, I was just like, in a weird way, kind of like what you were talking about, Matt, how they erased, like no one erased 9/11 from our memories, and it never will. But, we weren't shown a lot of that stuff. So I just was like, I couldn't believe, like, not that I couldn't believe it, but I was just so happy. And maybe that's the wrong word again, but I was just like, I was glad that they did that. And I was just so blown away by it. And The weight of the scene, or the scene had a little bit of its own weight just due to the story, but then add on the backdrop. And when I noticed what he was doing with the one take, I was just blown away by it. The fact that they were able to get those performances with that location, with that moment in time. And I was just so taken aback by it. I genuinely forgot the two characters in the scene. You could have said it was any two characters and I probably would have believed it. So I definitely asked that question leadingly, hoping and somewhat knowing that would be your answer. But that was I don't know, top three moment of the movie for me.
Without a doubt.
And we've been talking about subtlety, right? Like how it's in your face, but it's not shoved in your face. And we've talked about doing this little running gimmick, Rushmore Mountain, I think we're calling it. And the conceit being, would this movie be on a certain actor's Mount Rushmore? Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. But with paying a little bit of tribute to Jason Schwartzman and Wes Anderson. So we're referring to it as Rushmore Mountain.
These are OR scrubs.
Oh, are they?
For sure. And I'm curious, which actors would you think would be on their Rushmore Mountain? And I honestly think I might put it on Edward Norton's. It's maybe not his most. It kind of surprises me to even say that, but the way he plays it, I mean, because he has the ability to go some pretty intense places and be pretty intense, but he really was, I mean, pretty subdued for the most part. There's one 5-minute scene that he was not subdued at all, but I mean, for the person, I mean, this is a guy that's going to prison. He's a drug dealer. He's, a racketeer. He's all these things. You get the sense that he's not necessarily the best guy, but he seems just so reserved and so subdued. And I was blown away by his performance, and I was curious if you guys had any thoughts on that or how you felt about it, or maybe would he be on? Do you think this would be on his Rushmore Mountain?
I think so. I mean, it was kind of funny. I was thinking about like one of the more memorable things, and you'll see it on the artwork that I did for this episode, is just his beaten up face. And I'm trying to think of an Edward Norton movie that I've seen where he's not beaten up at some point in the movie.
It's true.
Yes.
He's good at getting his ass kicked.
Yeah. Yeah, sort of his face is just like that could have been the artwork for any of his movies. But he, there was something about like just the character that he plays. Like he's this drug dealer, but we get to see some of like the fierceness in the past where he's like, he's ready to go kill just like this like brutalized dog. But then like he has a change of heart and then he wants to take this brutalized dog, gets bitten, like doesn't care.
Poor little guy, Jesus, I think he broke his hip.
Okay, he's got a lot of bite left in him, huh?
I think Bull Pitt is not playing with you, man.
Yeah, no shit.
Come. You want police coming?
Oh, look, they used him like a fucking ashtray, man. What a bunch of assholes. Let's get him in the trunk.
What?
Yeah, there's a vet emergency room right over here. Come on, I like this guy.
He tries to bite your face off. He is me. You want the dog? I buy you a nice puppy tomorrow.
No. What the fuck I want with the puppy, Coaster? Come
Where
on.
do you go, Monty? Monty, wait.
Ultimately, like that's kind of, I mean, it kind of foreshadows like the rest of the movie. Like he doesn't care about getting bit, and then he does get bit, and then, the rest is history. But then he has to play like this sort of like cool, reserved, like I'm going to prison for the next 7 years, and still have sort of that same intensity that he had before. And so I would definitely put it on my Rushmore Mountain, along with the ones that come to mind, American History X. I loved his performance in Incredible Hulk. And yeah, I mean, I think he has the range to where like many of his movies could fit up there, but like sort of like that, his slicked back hair. I feel like he has a goatee in every single one of his movies.
Yeah.
Also, Italian Job.
It's in his contract.
Yeah. Grow your goatee out. But yeah, that image of him like beaten to a pulp and then just like driving there at the end will just like, when I think of Edward Norton, I think I'm always going to think of that scene.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, this would definitely fall on there. probably alongside also American History X, Fight Club, and I think Primal Fear would probably be my top 4, which for me is so interesting because this was my selection for the Spike Lee joints round. And I, unlike you, Tyler, had actually never heard of this movie until maybe a year ago. And I only really reacted to it because, shout out to the Big Picture podcast. That's one of the places I heard about it. And they just talked about it being like a tour de force as far as like Edward Norton's acting. And I think he is just always solid. Like he's fantastic all the time. And it rings true in this movie as well, because again, speaking to that opening scene with the dog, where it almost comes across vicious, but then there's also the mercy part of putting the dog down because it's in pain, and then he sees the dog has fight, so he's like, well, I'm going to keep it, but then we see things throughout the movie where you know where he came from, like who these people know he is, and what he's capable of doing, like the interrogation scene in the club, like he definitely has the hard side to him, but I also just love Edward Norton because of the humor. I mean, honestly, the minute that I knew that I was like sold on this movie is in that beginning scene when they're in the car together.
You want to play this cowboy? No, the dog boy in middle of the highway.
Dog boy? That's funny, because you really mastered the language.
Funny. You're bad luck, Monty. You bring bad luck on me. Always everything that can go wrong, go wrong. It is not just you and me anymore when we go out. It's you and me and Doyle.
Who's Doyle?
Doyle's Law. What?
It's Murphy.
Who is Murphy?
Who's Murphy? Who's Doyle? It's Murphy's Law. Whatever can go wrong will go wrong.
Him, yes.
Yes, him.
And his friend, who I can't remember right now, but he's like, yeah, it's like Doyle's Law. He's like, I think you mean Murphy's Law. He's like, who's Murphy? He's like, who's Murphy? Who's Doyle? Like, no one knows who that is. And I just love that that's what they end up naming the dog. Like, I think that's fantastic, just all from that opening scene. So I would definitely put this on Edward Norton, Rushmore Mountain. I would hesitate to do Philip Seymour Hoffman just because he has done so many fantastic things. But speaking of that, it just blows my mind that this movie got nominated for 0 Academy Awards. The acting and everything in this movie is fantastic, and I just can't believe it didn't get nominated for anything at all.
Yeah, there's not a performance I didn't like. There's certainly a storyline I didn't like. Speaking of Philip Seymour Hoffman,
yes.
I love Philip Seymour Hoffman, and that could have just done. He could have been not in the movie at all. That whole storyline, and I think it would have been fine. I think I read your Letterboxd review, Ben, and I know you mentioned that the discomfort that we feel is intentional. I just don't think it was necessary. We get it. The forbidden fruit and humans are complicated, and
yeah, for sure.
Whatever argument you want to give me is fine, but for my money, it was just like the movie already. Like the first time I watched it, I kind of felt like, oh, maybe that was about 20 minutes too long. I enjoyed all of it, but like at a certain point, like I get it. I think I could have just done without Philip Seymour Hoffman. Maybe there could have been another scummy side of him that we could have explored. I didn't need it.
I think that'd be, spot on. I would not argue with that at all. I wish he had some different sort of vice or issue or something, because it just made me uncomfortable. And it's such a, not necessarily a contradiction, but it's also hard for me because I think one of the most powerful scenes in the whole movie is that scene in the bathroom, when he finally acts on his urges, and you see Anna Paquin's face when she realized like what's just happened. And then we look at him and realize what happened, and just the silent moments after that with the red lights. Then we get the wonderful and traditional Spike Lee shot of the character on the dolly just like floating as Philip Seymour Hoffman's like realizing what he's done, possibly ruined his life, all of that stuff. but I don't know that it's worth how uncomfortable that storyline made me. I just wish there had been something else if he had like a gambling problem or I don't know, anything else just that didn't make me so uncomfortable personally. And also just along those lines, I don't know what Anna Paquin was wearing, that skirt that's held together by safety pins. Like what private school lets their students dress like this? It's crazy. She has like a henna tattoo. I hope it's a henna tattoo on her stomach. I don't know if it's a real one or not, but it's just like, man, what is this outfit? But
I honestly think I must have pushed that on my memory because I don't remember any of those details. I think I was just like, I don't want to remember this. Like,
I don't blame you for that at all. I was just more caught off guard, like who okayed this? But yeah,
for sure.
I after viewing the movie, I obviously like the first thing I do is check your guys' Letterboxd if you've already watched it. After I've written mine, just to see, where we fall. And honestly, like I was surprised that the three of us really had like very similar reactions to this movie.
Yeah.
And again, like I'll echo Ben, like I don't disagree with like that at all, like the discomfort, but I do like with the director, like Spike Lee and the way he adapts things, it does make me feel like maybe there is something maybe that I missed. Because it seems like there's never really something that's unnecessary. And that's not necessarily fair to say, like surely great directors throw in things that are unnecessary. So, but I'm just saying, like, I did try extra hard to try to fit in why it might be the way it is, why it might be there. And the only thought that comes to mind is just the idea that you have these like you have a comparison to, it's really about these three friends. And when you're introduced to the one friend who I cannot think of his name and I cannot even think of the actor's name. So I just
Barry Pepper.
Yeah. Yes.
Frank. I think is that Frank.
Frank. Frank. Yes.
Yeah. The stock guy. Guy.
So you're introduced to him as like this like hot shot, on Wall Street.
Hey Frank, coming out with us tonight or what?
Nah, I gotta meet some friends tonight.
Big date, huh? Who's the new bimbo? Can I bang her first?
Yeah, you wish, brother. Nah, it's more of a going away party.
Nah, listen, Frank. The other thing. What? You still holding on to all those OEX contracts?
Yeah, you better believe it. Why? You nervous?
I don't like it, Frank. Claims numbers have dropped 3 weeks straight, and I don't feel comfortable with this.
What, so claim numbers drops, everybody thinks appointment's gonna be up? Come on,
everybody,
Sal.
Frank, look at me when I talk to you. What? Everybody's thinking this because it's pretty much always true. I mean, when it rains outside, people get wet. Right or wrong, Frank?
Not this time, Sal. I'm telling you, I got a theory. Look at this. Check
oh, good. You've got a theory. Look, Frank, fuck you and your theory.
And usually you hate those guys.
Yes.
Like those
I think I know where you're going with
the
this.
slime balls. And in the end, like he seems to be like the more endearing friend, the one who's willing to do the most for his friend, and like probably like ironically the more pure of the three.
Right.
And then you have Jake, who is what you would perceive as the more pure. He's working a public job. You find out that he comes from money. He doesn't have to be a teacher, and yet that's his chosen vocation. And so, yet he puts himself in the scenario where he has his vice now, and he has his like slippery slope that he's tempted with the whole movie, and then finally acts on it. And then you obviously have Monty, who acted on it like way earlier, basically since high school, has been kind of doing this thing. And so like we get to see kind of how that unravels and see that like our perceptions were off. Like Jake couldn't resist, and Jake fell just like Monty fell. And so then you have Frank, who is our perceived like slime ball, who ends up being the one who takes one for the team in several areas. He confronts Natural. He beats up Monty.
Yeah.
Things that are not easy or comfortable to do. Yeah, I guess that's my thought on it.
Yeah, no, I genuinely had the same thought because like you see they introduce Frank and you think immediately like Wolf of Wall Street or Boiler Room or any of these other like scumbag Wall Street movies. Like, oh fuck, here's that guy, and you like are ready to hate him. And obviously, especially after hearing you talk about it, that was the intention. They flip your perception where the private school teacher ends up being the scumbag and the Wall Street guy ends up having the most integrity of the bunch, or seemingly anyways. But even all that said, I don't know. I just wish he would have done it differently. It was effective. It certainly stayed with all three of us, but I just, I didn't love it. It made me feel too weird. A little too weird.
I mean, just to add to that, I feel like we naturally want to relate to the perceived good guy. And so to see the perceived good guy take a route that like is so uncomfortable that like we would never do, the whole time you're like, no, don't, and then have that uncomfortable moment, I feel like just amplifies it like 100 times.
Yeah, and in their conversation too, like when we learn that he has the money, that he doesn't need this job, you know, that's just like, oh, so he's putting himself in this position on purpose. It's like an alcoholic getting a job at a bar. It's like, why would you do this to yourself? And it's just like, it leads to other questions. And I just wanted to say really quick that one of the things I loved a lot about Barry Pepper was his whole grading system for him and Philip Seymour Hoffman being in the 99th percentile, and it basically just all being about money and nothing else. But I thought that was a great conversation that they had.
You know what? You're in the 62nd percentile. That's what you are.
What is that?
62nd percentile?
Yeah.
That's you. That's where you rate. All the bachelors in New York, we're all competing for the same women. We're the straight bachelors.
I'm in the 62nd percentile.
Yes, sir.
So in other words, I'm better than 62% of the New York bachelors.
Well, you're rated higher than them, yeah.
But worse than, what, 38%?
37, no 100%.
How'd you come up with 62?
There's all science figuring it out.
There's a science of figuring it out. Well, that sounds very scientific. You know, if I may inquire, what's your rating?
Funny you should ask. Because I happen to fall right in the 99th percentile.
Of course. Who came up with the ratings?
I didn't.
You came up with the ratings. And you get a 99. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
What about Rosario Dawson? Why isn't she in more stuff? The whole time, I'm like, man, she is so charming. Like, she's gorgeous. She just is like, she is the prototype, you know, dream girl in the movie. You know, like she just. I don't know. I'm just curious why she's not in more stuff, because I thought she was fantastic here.
Yeah, she was so good in this movie. I mean, I thought her character was wonderful and how she played it. I think one of the things that's very interesting about this role and in the movie is we learn, you know, as creepy as Philip Seymour Hoffman is with Anna Paquin, we learned that Rosario Dawson was the same age when Naturelle was the same age when Monty picked up on her. But for some reason, I feel like we see the maturity over time of Naturelle. And I don't know if that, did that connect with you guys at all? The fact that, these were the same age when they met the other person, but I don't know why the creepiness didn't seem to be there with Monty and Naturelle.
I guess just because we didn't have to see it. You know
I guess it was just a quick flashback or something. But no, she's fantastic. I mean, I love her in just about everything. I mean, she's on my celebrity crush Rushmore Mountain without a doubt. But
your Crushmore Mountain,
my Crushmore Mountain.
There we go.
I'm so mad I didn't think of that.
Funny you should say that.
Why? Why is it funny I should say that?
What you say, it was funny.
Because you can't, when you... It's an expression, if you say that...
It's a euphemism,
Can you
right?
explain this? You're the English teacher.
I think what he means, Kostya, is that when you say funny, you should say that. That means that it reminds you of a funny story.
Exactly.
No. It was funny, what you say. Funny, you should say that.
But it still makes no fucking sense.
Yeah, she's up there. But yeah, she was wonderful in this movie, and I think her performance was so strong. And kind of going back really quickly to Barry Pepper, I wanted to talk to you guys and find out. There's the scene where Monty asks Frank for the huge favor.
Listen, I got one idea. One way I might buy myself a little room to breathe. I need a big favor from you. Cool.
And I want to know what you guys think the favor was, because I feel like there was a couple of options here. I feel like it could have been, initially my first thought was when he tries to get out of Naturelle that she's the one that ratted him out or not. And then obviously the other one is beating up. But I was just kind of curious about that, because Monty never found out from Frank what he found out about Naturelle. Monty found out about his bodyguard or whatever he was. I still don't necessarily understand the relationship. His muscle being the one that ratted him out. But I was just kind of curious if you guys had a specific take on what the favor was that Monty was trying to call in.
Oh yeah, I think it was for sure just that he needed to get beat up before he went in there. Because imagine if you asked me to beat you up. You know what I mean? Like I would like that. I mean, I never really thought of it in those terms. Yeah. But like, I don't think I could do it. I really don't think I could, no matter how much you said you needed it. Yeah. And he obviously had to push him to get to a place to where he would do it. But I think to me that was just, he just knew, because like we've talked about, it turns out that Frank is the one with the more soft heart. And it seems he'd be less likely to want to do it, but also maybe he's the one that's more capable, because Philip Seymour Hoffman,
Jacob.
What the hell's Jacob? He seems like, he's a scumbag, but he's kind of soft. I don't know if he'd be able to beat him up if he wanted to, you know what I mean?
For sure.
So that's to me, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I went through the same thought process. Like, is it just him grilling Naturalda to find out if she was the one who kind of snitched on him, or if it was the beat up scene, or was it something that like didn't get explained very well? Like, is he going to look after his dad in the bar? Like, I didn't know, but I would assume just with the way it was cut and the progression of the story that it was him getting beaten up at the end, which I think is noteworthy because on one hand, it's sort of a cliche, like that idea that like, listen, this is going to happen and I need you to kill me, or I need you to do something to me. And like, when push comes to shove, they're never willing to do it. Like we saw in Infinity War, where Chris Pratt's supposed to shoot Gamora and then he can't do it. But then I guess he kind of does, but then he doesn't, he hesitates.
Yeah.
I feel like we see that in movies and we never see them actually do it. And so it was interesting to see Frank actually get to a point where he does do it, which is like what his friend really does want him to do. And that was like sort of a hard scene to watch too, because you can see just how upset he is.
Oh yeah, it broke his heart, man.
And then like Jake and the dog, what's the dog's name?
Doyle.
Just have to sit and watch. And like Doyle at that point has become a character in the movie. Like
shout out Doyle, man.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah, he might be on the Rushmore Mountain of dog characters in movies. So this movie's full of them. What's a pun for that?
I don't know.
Roughmore Mountain?
Yeah, there we go.
Sure, works for me. Speaking of Doyle, I'm always so jealous when, I know it's it's a movie character, but when they're just like two little buddies and like in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the little clicks and Rosie knows exactly what to do. Rosie, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. That's like what Edward Norton had with his dog Bear. Just like two buddies, like, dog would do anything you wanted. Very loyal. I just thought it was sweet.
Barking at the DEA agents when they come in, but Mom's just like, chill out. And he just stops. Like, oh, that's a very well-trained dog.
Yeah. He knows what's going on. Smart pup. Brian Cox seems like he'd be a hell of a fun time to have a shot of whiskey with.
Oh my God. He's another person where every time he shows up, I'm like, I'm so glad he's here. Like I don't know if either of you have watched Succession, but he is so good in Succession, and he was wonderful in this as well. I was so happy to see him on screen. I did not realize he was in it. I don't think I knew anyone besides Edward Norton and Philip Seymour Hoffman were in this before the credits rolled. So I was very happy to see him show up.
Yeah, killed it.
A couple of things about the end of the movie, now that we kind of talked about both Barry Pepper and Brian Cox. Like, I think one of the strongest things from that fight scene is that Monty is the one that has to console Frank afterwards, after he just got his ass kicked. Like, he's the one that has to get up and go console him. That's how much of a softie Frank is. But like you guys said, I think that's maybe why Monty knew it was such a big ask, because he knew like this is going to be hard for him to do, but I need him to do it. I was curious what your guys' take on it was, because they said he was going to be 38 when he got out. Like, he wasn't going to be 90. He was gone for 7 years, but it's just like this going away party, and that was kind of hard for me to understand throughout, other than just the fact that once he gets out, he's going to be a felon, and it's just hard to like go straight or get any sort of job after that. But did that ring weird at all to you guys? Or, I mean, did that catch you off guard or anything? Or what were your thoughts on that?
I guess trying to get into Spike Lee's head. And first of all, this was like, based off of my experience with Spike Lee movies, this was far and out like the most different from any of them, because I can't even think of a black actor that was in it off the top of my head.
We had Patrice O'Neal like guarding the club, and that's it. It was also a great cameo to see.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, like, it's super different. So I was trying to find that sort of like underlying commentary that he likes to include. And then you get to think about like the situation in so many of his other movies, and the fact that this guy who has been like moving drugs, you know, for years, has the luxury of just like having a last day with his friends before going to prison, juxtaposed to like what many in the black community face. I mean, we just talked about Do the Right Thing, and, you know, that kid didn't even get a chance at like a trial or a charge, you know? So like showing like sort of like white privilege in the scenario of criminals, maybe a little bit of the commentary, and that like 7 years is like the worst thing in the world to them.
That's a really good point. I hadn't really thought about that. Yeah, the fact that he's got the privilege also of having his dad drop him off. Like he doesn't have to like they're just like, yeah, just report here eventually, you know? Like
it's not supposed to happen to us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'll be there, I'll have my dad drop me off.
It'll be fun to show up.
I think of it, so I just turned about the age that he would have been when he was released from prison. And I think of how different my life is from when I was 30, 31 till now, just turning 37. And I mean, it makes sense to me. Like it resonates to me that's like 7 years it's a long time, you know, and like he still has a full life ahead of him. And, you know, one can only hope that he turned himself around and was reformed, and his second chance was well-deserved and well-earned. But, you know, to me, like there's people that I had in my life at that time who some I'll never talk to again. And some like, you know, we've just drifted apart. There's some I've been lucky enough to keep in my life, like you. There's new people in my life like Matt. This podcast is new. I have a new career. Like my life is almost I mean, I live in a different city, you know, like my life is almost night and day different than it was when I was 30. So to me, that, I mean, that's 7 years. That's a lot of weight, you know. It holds for me for sure.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's a fair point. It's a long time without a doubt. When he was initially facing 15 to life, and then it's down to 7, and in my very limited lack of understanding about the judicial system, is like, I feel like he could be out in 3.5 years with good behavior. But I don't know. I'm also curious with this whole Brian Cox thing. How did the ending hit you guys?
I wrote this in my letterbox, which, by the way, folks listening, that's a drinking game. Anytime we mention letterbox, you have to take a drink. I just wanted them to keep driving.
Give me the word and I'll take a left turn.
Left turn to where?
Take the GW Bridge and go west. Get you stitched up somewhere and keep going. Find a nice little town. On the way, stop in Chicago for a Cubs game. You always told me you wanted to see Wrigley Field.
Dad.
I'm saying it. If you want it, that's what you want, I'll do it.
Oh, I'd take your bar.
My bar. Jesus, my bar. They can take my bar to hell and back. You think my bar is more important to me than you, my only child? Give me the word and we'll go.
I was like, I just like, to me, I hope they did just go west, you know? And I hope they made it to Mexico. I know he's a felon. I know he deserves his time in jail or whatever, but it's just like, I don't know. I kind of hope he made it. You know?
Yeah. I like that the handlebar mustache instead of the goatee just reminds me of like the glasses for Clark Kent and Superman. Like, if anybody cannot put those two people together, like all he did is shave the middle part. It's like, oh, I have no idea who this person is. I've never met them before. But yeah, no, I thought it was a great ending. It went on a lot longer than I was expecting, which I liked though. You know, I just thought he was like, oh, we could just keep going and start a new life. And then 5 minutes later, the montage kind of wraps up. It's like, oh, they really went through detail. And I loved that. And I think selfishly, I just didn't want to see Ed Norton again in the car. I kind of just wanted it to end. Yeah. You know, we do that whole montage, like what could happen. We go to this aerial shot of the car driving. And in my mind, I just wish it just cut to black there, because it's like, did Brian Cox drop him off, or are they going west, or what's happening here? Like, I just would love the ambiguousness that would have offered. I guess that's still an option, even though we end on the shot of Edward Norton, but really, really strong ending, I felt.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I was just going to juxtapose it to like scenes like in La La Land where the characters get to see sort of like what would have happened.
Yeah.
Only in that case, like we know that they didn't end up together. Spoiler alert for La La Land. But in this case, even though it did cut back to him, there's still like, I guess, the chance that it does work out that way.
Yeah.
But I do agree. Like, I feel like, yeah, selfishly, it would have been nice to not cut back and then just wonder, you know, is that what happened?
Maybe they'll make a sequel. We'll get 26th Hour and we'll find out what happened.
Maybe.
We can only be so lucky.
So we're 2 episodes in now, and we haven't really talked. I mean, we kind of have a little bit. We haven't really talked too much about Spike Lee's craft, but I want to touch on it a little bit, just with when the comment you made about how the montage kind of goes and goes and goes. I feel like that's might be one of his biggest strengths as a filmmaker, is he can really hold a moment. Like, we have these long, drawn out moments, and none of it seems wasted. You stay in the moment. You don't really get bored of it. You don't want to leave that moment. He's really, really, really good at holding you into these moments in the film. Like the shot over Ground Zero is obviously one of them. And that one, I mean, it was sort of easy to do for a couple of reasons. But the montage leaving, in Do the Right Thing, there was moments like that. And of course the 5-minute fuck you monologue.
Fuck this whole city and everyone in it. From the row houses of Astoria to the penthouses on Park Avenue. From the projects in the Bronx to the lofts in Soho. From the tenements in Alphabet City to the brownstones in Park Slope to the split levels in Staten Island. Let an earthquake crumble it. Let the fires rage. Let it burn to fucking ash, and then let the waters rise and submerge this whole rat-infested place. No, fuck you, Montgomery Brogan. You had it all and you threw it away, you dumb fuck!
I mean, I sat here and talked about how subtle of a performance it was from Edward Norton. That was the farthest from subtle you could get. But, I mean, at a certain point, you'd think that you'd be tired of, like, this tirade. And you kind of just wanted him to keep going. You're like, how much do you got, buddy? Like, let's go. Get it all out.
Keep it going.
And I just, like, I think of Do the Right Thing, the moment with the ice cubes on the lips, like when they're rolling around in bed, or even the dance scene that begins the movie. It's just like, I feel like Spike is so good at just keeping a moment and then kind of coming out of it. And almost feels like these little miniature dream states. You kind of like come out of this, like, okay, now we're back in the movie. You know what I mean? I think so far that's my favorite thing that Spike does.
Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. That bathroom scene, like you mentioned, just the way it's shot, where the person in the mirror is moving, but the person in the bathroom looking in the mirror, you can tell it's a different response. So this is all kind of in Ed Norton's head and all kind of what he's thinking. And besides that similarity to Do the Right Thing, in the best way possible, with the limited, experience I have with Spike Lee movies, I wouldn't have known this was a Spike Lee movie until that Philip Seymour Hoffman floating moment coming out of the bathroom. I think that's a very notorious Spike move, which is awesome. I love it. And the fact that the tirade in the bathroom was written, you know, before, I mean, that's from the book, from the source novel with by David Benioff, who was one of the co-creators for Game of Thrones. And what he yells in the bathroom is all verbatim out of the book. Whether or not that got inspired from Do the Right Thing, I think you'd be hard pressed to convince me otherwise. I feel like that's a pretty like a parallel thing happening there, but all out of the book. They obviously, as we mentioned earlier, had added in the Osama bin Laden section due to what had happened in the country. But yeah, I think that he has these touches which really add to every single movie that he's done. And yeah, you're totally spot on with that.
Yeah, and it was interesting. Like I looked into like sort of how this movie was received, and like people sort of, or I'm saying people, but I just read a little blurb that talked about the reception and how like people looked at the Spike Lee-isms in this movie as like a drawback, which I would never say it's a drawback. I mean, some people could argue that it gets in the way of certain sentiments, but I think in this case, well, what's funny is that people talk about it as a drawback, but that's probably the most Spike Lee moment in the movie. Mm-hmm. And that's still, as far as reception goes, what people kept going back to was like how strong of a scene that was. So it's like kind of contradictory there. Yeah. But I thought that scene was interesting, kind of full circling back to like the sentiment around 9/11 and the honesty around things, because here in Utah, we kind of had an unapologetic fear for what we didn't understand, which quite frankly is like the Muslim culture and religion. And we kind of felt justified in that fear and anger, and very obviously like it was not an easy time, and probably still, I shouldn't say probably, still isn't a good time for our Middle Eastern immigrants here in the United States. They still face like that fear and misunderstanding for the situation as a whole. And so to take something that was written in the book and adapt it to post 9/11 New York City, those sentiments that he's like expressing is sort of way more honest than anything I've seen about, 9/11. Like those sentiments that like are behind the scenes, like he's in the bathroom, these are private feelings. Mm-hmm. And to see like him express those things and hear it said, because like when you hear it said like that, it's like, oh man, this is like the harshest thing I've ever seen. But like it's real, like that's how it was.
Fuck you and this whole city and everyone in it. No. Fuck the panhandlers grubbing for money and smiling at me behind my back. Fuck the squeegee men dirtying up the clean windshield of my car. Get a fucking job. Fuck the Sikhs and the Pakistanis bombing down the avenues in decrepit cabs. Curry steaming out their pores, stinking up my day. Terrorists in fucking training. Slow the fuck down!
I was curious. So this whole movie is about Monty before he goes to prison. And let's pretend you have a 7-year sentence coming up. Like, what does your last day look like? That's kind of I honestly don't even know how I'd answer that, because like the weight of your life going away. And, we talked about it a little bit, but his life's going to be different if and when he gets out. It's not going to be the same. His life as he knows it is over. So I'm just, I'm curious if you thought at all about how you would spend your last day as a free man.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't thought about it too much. I think the reason this movie is so interesting with that is I just feel like if Edward Norton knew some things, not Edward Norton, but Monty, if he knew some things before it happened, when the day starts, he doesn't know if he can trust Naturel. He still doesn't know who ratted him out. And I think that really affects the day. If you can trust your partner, then you'd probably spend more time with them, but there's at best like a kiss exchange between them, it's like, well, you're not going to see her for 7 years. You don't need to go into any sort of explicit detail, but it's like to only have a kiss share, that's crazy. But again, he didn't know until the very end, like whether or not he could trust her. So I think that was interesting, and just needing to clear things up with, is it Nikolai? He's like the gang leader, Uncle Nikolai, I think. something like that. But to clear up that he wasn't the rat, you know, as far as the drugs and things like that. But I mean, for me personally, I'm just going to do my best to get my hands on some Round Table pizza. That's my number one goal.
They've got them here in Portland. Anytime you want to come up.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm taking the road trip to Vegas or Elko or just flying up to Portland real quick, but that's strangely the first thing that would come to my mind is like, I just want one last pizza.
It's beautiful. It's honest. I love it. Yeah, it's something you just said, Ben, like, he doesn't know if he can trust him. He doesn't know who ratted him out. But at a certain point, like, does that even matter? You know what I mean? Like, let's just all, like, I don't know. I've never been ratted out for all the nefarious things I've done in my life. So I don't know how I'd react. But, yeah, it kind of struck me like, who cares? At this point, you're going in.
Yeah.
You got 7 years. You can just hit the library and make phone calls or whatever, you know? Like,
yeah, exactly.
You can figure this out. Like, I don't know why it matters, but I just don't know. Yeah, I'd hope I'd have something better to do than go hang out at some shitty club.
Yeah.
When I think about like what I would do in that scenario, like I can't think, like on one hand, like he gets with his two best friends, and I think that's easy if you have like two people that are just like the natural choice. It sounds like those three were like, you know, always together. Mm-hmm. There's a strong friendship bond there, but like I think back to the old MySpace days, and like so much goes into like who's in your top 8, and like someone's getting offended, right?
Yes,
so sure. Someone's upset that they're not in your top 8, and so like I think that's like something that I just wouldn't even want to deal with like over the next 7 years. Like come back after 7 years and like someone's upset that they didn't see me on my last day.
Yeah,
and so like I feel like personally, like I would try to make it as low key and not a big deal as possible, just given my personality. There's a degree of like having spent like a 2-year service mission in Guatemala, and like the way that last day was like I remember people like they kept trying to throw these like different little parties, and to me it was just like too much. Like I really didn't want to like think about it, or these are people that you're never going to see for the rest of your life. So it was like, man, I just want a normal day, and then I want to get out of here, and I kind of just don't want to think about it. And then so I think that's sort of how my last day would be. Like, obviously, like spend time with my family. Like that's the easiest, you know, go-to thing. And then just try to make it not as big of a deal as possible.
Hurry and record a bunch of episodes so we can release them while you're gone.
That's right. Yeah.
Like, join us next year for the next episode. We'll release this.
Well, speaking of next episode, I think, I feel like we've covered it. I feel like we've talked about everything that we wanted to talk about. I'm obviously speaking for all three of us right now, but unless anyone objects, I think it's probably good enough to wrap up that conversation.
Yeah.
And next time we'll be discussing Malcolm X. It'll be the third and final Spike Lee film that we talk about. So, you know, make sure we hope you're following along with us. We want you to be a part of our movie club. That's the whole reason we're doing this. We've had such a good time talking to each other and you know, text threads and letterboxed reviews and all that. Remember, drink if you're listening along. But yeah, we want you to be a part of our club. So if you're listening, make sure you keep listening. Make sure you keep watching along with us, and let us know your thoughts. Tell us how full of shit we are. Tell us how much you agree. Whatever you want to say. It's a free country, and you can tell us what you want. So, and we hope you do. And we're glad if you were here with us. And thanks for listening. And we'll catch you next time.